The Whispering Woods. Deep within the dense canopy of the Whispering Woods lies a darkness that defies explanation. Legends whisper of trees that speak in hushed tones, sharing secrets too dark for mortal ears. It is said that those who dare to listen too closely risk losing themselves to the haunting melodies that echo through the ancient groves. Amelia had always been drawn to the mystery of the Whispering Woods. As a child, she would spend hours exploring its shadowy depths, searching for the source of the eerie whispers that seemed to beckon her deeper into the labyrinth of trees. Now, as an adult, she returned to the forest, determined to uncover its secrets once and for all. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves as Amelia ventured deeper into the heart of the woods. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches casting long, ominous shadows that danced in the fading light. With each step, she could feel the weight of centuries pressing down upon her, as if the very essence of the forest itself was watching and waiting. As night began to fall, Amelia stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. In the center stood an ancient oak, its gnarled roots twisting into the earth like the fingers of some long-forgotten deity. Intrigued, she approached the tree, feeling a strange sense of unease wash over her. Suddenly, the air grew still, and a chill crept down Amelia's spine. She could hear the faintest whispering, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, but there was no breeze to stir the branches. Trembling, she reached out to touch the tree, only to recoil in horror as the bark seemed to pulse beneath her fingertips. With a shudder, Amelia stumbled backwards, her heart pounding in her chest. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as if the very trees themselves were speaking to her. She tried to flee, but the forest seemed to close in around her, the darkness swallowing her whole. Lost and disoriented, Amelia stumbled through the underbrush, the relentless whispers echoing in her ears. She could feel eyes watching her from the shadows, countless unseen presences lurking just beyond the edge of her vision. Panic clawed at her throat as she realized she was not alone in the woods. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, its form shifting and twisting like smoke in the moonlight. Amelia froze, unable to tear her eyes away from the specter before her. It spoke in a voice like the rustling of leaves, its words sending shivers down her spine. "Welcome, child," the figure whispered, its voice echoing through the trees. "You have come seeking the secrets of the Whispering Woods, but beware, for not all who enter here leave unscathed. The forest holds many secrets, and those who dare to uncover them risk losing themselves to its darkness." With a cry of terror, Amelia turned and fled, the haunting whispers echoing in her ears long after she had escaped the confines of the forest. She knew then that she would never forget the horrors she had witnessed within the Whispering Woods, and that its secrets would haunt her for the rest of her days. In the depths of the Whispering Woods, where darkness reigns supreme, the secrets of the forest are whispered only to those brave enough to listen. But beware, for once you enter its shadowy embrace, you may never find your way back out again. The Mirror's Reflection. In the attic of an old Victorian mansion, amidst dust-covered relics of a bygone era, there stood a full-length mirror. Its ornate frame, once gleaming with gold leaf, now bore the scars of time, its surface clouded with age. But it was not the mirror's appearance that disturbed those who gazed upon it. It was the chilling presence that lurked within its depths. Eleanor, the new owner of the mansion, discovered the mirror while exploring the attic on a rainy afternoon. Drawn by a sense of curiosity, she brushed aside cobwebs and peered into its murky surface. At first, all she saw was her own reflection staring back at her. But as she lingered, she noticed something peculiar, a subtle movement, as if the reflection had a life of its own. Shaken but intrigued, Eleanor decided to investigate further. She spent hours in front of the mirror, watching in mounting horror as her reflection began to mimic her movements with unnerving precision. It would smile when she smiled, frown when she frowned, and even blink when she blinked, all with a cold, soulless stare. As days turned into weeks, Eleanor's obsession with the mirror grew. she found herself unable to tear herself away from its gaze, drawn deeper into its twisted reflection with each passing hour. Her friends grew concerned, noticing the haunted look in her eyes and the whispers of madness that seemed to follow her wherever she went. One night, unable to sleep, Elena crept back up to the attic and stood before the mirror once more. The room was bathed in moonlight, casting eerie shadows across the dusty floorboards. She stared into the mirror, feeling a chill creep down her spine as her reflection remained unnaturally still. Its eyes locked with hers in a silent, unspoken challenge. Suddenly, the reflection moved, breaking free from its mirrored prison and reaching out towards Elena with ghostly fingers. She recoiled in horror, stumbling backwards and knocking over a stack of old books. But when she looked back at the mirror, her reflection was once again motionless, as if nothing had happened. Terrified but determined to uncover the truth, Elena delved into the history of the mansion, searching for clues to the mirror's dark origins. She discovered tales of a troubled artist who had once lived in the house, consumed by a madness that drove him to create twisted works of art. It was said that he had crafted the mirror himself, imbuing it with his own tormented soul. Armed with this knowledge, Elena confronted the mirror, demanding answers to the questions that had plagued her for so long. But instead of answers, she found only silence, a deafening, suffocating silence that seemed to swallow her whole. And in that moment, she realized the true horror of the mirror's reflection. It wasn't mimicking her, it was mocking her, taunting her with the knowledge that she was nothing but a puppet dancing to its sinister tune. With a cry of despair, Elena smashed the mirror to pieces, shattering the illusion of her twisted reflection once and for all. But as the shards fell to the floor, she couldn't shake the feeling that something remained, lurking in the darkness, waiting for the opportunity to strike again. And as she fled the attic, she knew that she would never truly be free from the haunting gaze of the mirror's reflection. In the days that followed, the attic remained empty, the shattered remnants of the mirror serving as a grim reminder of the darkness that had once dwelled within. And though Elena tried to move on with her life, she could never shake the feeling that the mirror's reflection still lingered, watching and waiting for the chance to reclaim its lost puppet. In the quiet solitude of the attic, where shadows dance and whispers linger, the mirror's reflection remains a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks within us all. And though Elena may have escaped its grasp, the memory of its haunting gaze will haunt her for the rest of her days. The Forgotten Doll. In the heart of a forgotten town, where time seemed to stand still, there stood an abandoned house. Its windows shattered, its doors hanging off their hinges, it loomed like a specter against the backdrop of overgrown weeds and decaying buildings. But amidst the ruin and decay, there was one thing that remained untouched: a child's doll, its porcelain face frozen in an eternal smile. The townsfolk whispered of the doll, speaking of curses and hauntings that plagued anyone who dared to enter the abandoned house. But Sarah, a curious young girl with a penchant for adventure, paid no heed to their warnings. Intrigued by the doll's haunting beauty, she ventured into the house, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. As Sarah stepped across the threshold, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, and the floorboards creaked beneath her feet. But she pressed on, drawn inexorably towards the doll that sat alone in the darkness, its porcelain eyes gleaming in the dim light. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out to touch the doll, her fingers brushing against its smooth porcelain skin. But as she did, she felt a strange sensation wash over her, a feeling of unease, as if the doll were watching her every move with malevolent intent. Ignoring her instincts, she picked up the doll and cradled it in her arms, determined to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its soulless gaze. As night fell, Sarah returned home with the doll clutched tightly to her chest. She placed it on her bedside table, intending to study it further in the morning. But as she drifted off to sleep, she could feel the doll's eyes boring into her, its presence looming over her like a dark shadow. In the dead of night, Sarah awoke to the sound of soft footsteps echoing through the darkness. Groggy and disoriented, she sat up in bed, her heart pounding in her chest. And that's when she saw it, the doll standing at the foot of her bed, its porcelain face twisted into a sinister grin. Terrified, Sarah tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. She watched in horror as the doll's eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light, casting long shadows across the room. And then, with a sudden burst of movement, it lunged towards her, its tiny hands reaching out with a grip like iron. With a cry of terror, Sarah leaped out of bed and fled from the room, the doll's laughter echoing in her ears as she ran. She stumbled down the stairs, tripping over her own feet in her haste to escape the nightmare that pursued her. And when she finally reached the safety of the street outside, she knew that she could never return to that accursed house again. For days, Sarah tried to forget the horrors she had witnessed in the abandoned house, but the memory of the doll haunted her every waking moment. She could feel its presence lurking in the shadows, watching and waiting for the opportunity to strike again. And though she tried to convince herself that it was just a nightmare, she knew deep down that the doll was real, and that it hungered for her soul. In the end, Sarah left the town behind, fleeing from the darkness that had consumed her life. But no matter where she went, she could never escape the memory of the forgotten doll and the terror it had brought into her world. And as she wandered alone through the desolate streets, she knew that some nightmares never truly end. In the heart of the abandoned house, where shadows linger and whispers echo, the forgotten doll waits patiently for its next victim. And though Sarah may have escaped its clutches, the memory of its haunting gaze will haunt her for the rest of her days. The Phantom Hitchhiker. Drivers, beware the lonely road at night, for there's a hitchhiker who appears out of nowhere. Those who offer a ride find themselves haunted by a passenger who vanishes into thin air. The legend tells of a desolate stretch of highway, shrouded in darkness and surrounded by towering trees. It's said that on moonless nights, a figure emerges from the shadows, a hitchhiker with a ghostly pallor and empty eyes that seem to pierce through the soul. Despite the warnings, some drivers can't resist the urge to offer a helping hand to the weary traveler. They pull over, their headlights illuminating the figure standing by the roadside, a chill wind whispering through the trees. The hitchhiker climbs into the back seat without a word, their presence sending a shiver down the driver's spine. They try to engage in conversation, but the hitchhiker remains silent, their gaze fixed on the road ahead with an intensity that borders on madness. As the miles stretch on, the driver becomes increasingly uneasy, their nerves fraying with each passing moment. They steal glances in the rearview mirror, but the hitchhiker's reflection is distorted, flickering like a candle in the wind. And then, without warning, the hitchhiker vanishes, leaving behind nothing but an icy chill that hangs in the air. The driver slams on the brakes, their heart racing, as they search the empty back seat for any sign of their mysterious passenger. But there's nothing there, save for the lingering sense of dread that clings to the air like a thick fog. The driver speeds away, desperate to escape the phantom hitchhiker and the horrors that lurk in the darkness. From that night on, the driver is haunted by visions of the hitchhiker, their ghostly form appearing at the edge of their vision when they least expect it. They try to convince themselves it's just a trick of the mind, but deep down, they know the truth. The hitchhiker is real, and they're not going to let their unwitting chauffeur escape so easily. And so, on lonely nights when the road stretches out before them like a ribbon of black, the driver can't help but glance nervously in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the phantom hitchhiker's empty eyes staring back at them, waiting patiently for their next unsuspecting victim. The Cursed Painting. Hanging in a museum, a painting depicts a haunting scene. Those who gaze upon it too long feel a chill in their bones, as if the figures in the canvas are reaching out to claim their souls. The painting is a masterpiece of darkness, its colors swirling together in a macabre dance of shadows and light. At first glance, it appears innocuous, a simple scene of a moonlit forest, with gnarled trees and winding paths leading into the unknown. But the longer one looks, the more the painting seems to come alive, its twisted forms writhing and contorting in the dim light. Faces peer out from the shadows, their eyes hollow and devoid of emotion, their mouths twisted into silent screams of agony. Those who dare to stare into the painting's depths find themselves consumed by a sense of dread, as if an unseen force is pulling them deeper into its dark embrace. They try to tear their eyes away, but find themselves unable to break free from its hypnotic gaze. And then, just when it seems as though they can't take it any longer, the painting releases its hold, leaving its victims trembling and shaken to the core. They stumble away, vowing never to return, but knowing deep down that the painting's curse will linger with them long after they've left its haunted halls. Despite the warnings, visitors continue to flock to the museum, drawn by the allure of the cursed painting. They stand before it in awe, their breath catching in their throats as they feel its dark power wash over them like a tidal wave. Some leave unscathed, their minds untouched by the horrors that lurk within the painting's depth. But others are not so lucky, their souls claimed by the darkness that dwells within its twisted frame. And so the cursed painting remains, a silent sentinel in the museum's halls, waiting patiently for its next unsuspecting victim to fall prey to its malevolent gaze. For as long as it hangs there, the darkness will continue to spread, consuming all who dare to gaze upon its haunted canvas. The haunted hotel room. Guests check into room 13, unaware of its dark history. In the dead of night, they hear whispers and footsteps, feeling an icy breath on their necks. They flee at dawn, leaving the room cursed for the next unsuspecting victim. Room 13, nestled within the grand halls of the old hotel, holds secrets darker than the shadows that dance upon its walls. To the casual observer, it appears no different from any other room. A cozy bed, a quaint writing desk, and a window overlooking the city below. But those who dare to spend the night within its confines soon discover that room 13 is not as welcoming as it seems. As the clock strikes midnight, whispers fill the air, their voices echoing through the darkness like the wails of lost souls. Guests toss and turn in their beds, tormented by visions of figures lurking in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. They feel a chill in the air, as if a cold hand is reaching out to touch them, sending shivers down their spines. Some try to flee, but find the door locked tight, as if the very walls themselves are conspiring to keep them trapped within the room's haunted embrace. Others brave the night, their hearts pounding in their chests as they wait for dawn to break and release them from their torment. But when morning comes, they find themselves changed, their minds haunted by the memories of the night before. They flee the hotel, vowing never to return, but knowing deep down that room 13 will always hold a piece of their soul, cursed for the next unsuspecting victim to fall prey to its dark magic. And so the cycle continues, as guests come and go, each one leaving behind a piece of themselves within the walls of room 13. For as long as it stands, the haunted hotel room will remain a beacon of terror, drawing in those who dare to seek shelter within its cursed confines. The midnight train. A lone traveler boards a deserted train bound for nowhere. As the train rattles on, they realize they're not alone. Shadows dance in the corners, and ghostly passengers stare with hollow eyes, whispering of a destination unknown. The train station stood silent and forgotten, its platforms empty and its tracks rusted with age. But amidst the decay, there was one train that remained, a relic of a bygone era, its paint peeling and its windows darkened with dirt. The traveler, weary and desperate for escape, stumbled upon the deserted station in the dead of night. With nowhere else to turn, they boarded the train, their footsteps echoing through the empty carriages as they searched for a seat. But as the train pulled away from the station and began to chug down the tracks, the traveler realized that they were not alone. Shadows danced in the corners of the carriage, their forms shifting and twisting in the dim light. And in the windows, ghostly faces stared back at them, their eyes hollow and devoid of life. As the train rattled on through the night, The traveler tried to ignore the whispers that filled the air, their voices barely audible above the roar of the engine. They spoke of a destination unknown, of a journey that had no end, and of the souls that were doomed to ride the midnight train for all eternity. But no matter how hard they tried to block out the haunting voices, the traveler couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of their stomach. They knew that they were trapped on a journey from which there was no escape, doomed to wander the empty carriages of the midnight train until the end of time. The abandoned asylum. Amidst overgrown vines and crumbling brick, an asylum stands forgotten. Those who dare to enter find themselves surrounded by echoes of tortured souls, their screams haunting the halls long after the last patient left. The asylum loomed on the outskirts of town, its once grand facade now a crumbling monument to madness. Its windows were shattered, its doors hanging off their hinges, and its halls choked with dust and debris. Despite the warnings of the townsfolk, some dared to venture inside, drawn by the allure of the asylum's dark past. They wandered its empty halls, their footsteps echoing through the silence like the whispers of the dead. But as they delved deeper into the decaying building, they found themselves surrounded by the echoes of tortured souls. They heard the screams of the patients, felt the chill of their despair seeping into their bones, and saw the shadows of their tormentors lurking in the darkness. Some tried to flee, but found the doors locked tight, trapping them within the asylum's haunted embrace. Others pressed on, their curiosity outweighing their fear, until they too were consumed by the madness that lurked within its walls. And when they finally emerged from the asylum's depths, they were changed, their minds haunted by the memories of the horrors they had witnessed. They fled from the building, vowing never to return, but knowing deep down that the asylum would always hold a piece of their soul, cursed for the next unsuspecting victim to fall prey to its malevolent influence. And so the abandoned asylum stood, a silent sentinel on the edge of town, its halls echoing with the screams of the past. For as long as it remained standing, it would continue to draw in those who dared to seek out its dark secrets, trapping them within its walls and claiming them as its own. The Whispering Swamp. In the heart of the swamp lies a darkness that defies comprehension. Those who dare to venture into its murky depths are met with whispers that seem to emanate from the very earth itself, beckoning them further into the tangled mass of trees and vines. The swamp stretches out before them like a vast, uncharted wilderness, its waters still and stagnant, its air thick with a scent of decay. But amidst the eerie silence, there is a sound, a whispering, murmuring sound that seems to come from all around, as if the very swamp itself is alive with secrets. Those who dare to venture into the swamp soon find themselves lost in its labyrinthine maze of trees and vines. They stumble through the murky waters, their footsteps muffled by the soft, squelching earth beneath their feet. And all the while, the whispers grow louder, more insistent, as if the swamp itself is trying to communicate with them. Some try to flee, but find themselves ensnared by the tangled undergrowth, their cries for help drowned out by the cacophony of voices that surround them. Others press on, driven by a primal urge to uncover the truth that lies hidden within the swamp's dark embrace. But no matter how far they venture, they never find what they're looking for. Instead, they find themselves consumed by the darkness, their minds lost to the whispers that echo through the swamp like a siren's song. And when they finally emerge from its depths, they are changed, their eyes haunted by the horrors they have witnessed, their minds forever scarred by the secrets they have uncovered. They flee from the swamp, vowing never to return, but knowing deep down that its whispers will haunt them for the rest of their days. For in the heart of the Whispering Swamp, where darkness reigns supreme, the secrets of the earth are whispered only to those brave enough to listen. But beware, for once you enter its tangled embrace, you may never find your way back out again. The Haunted Dollhouse. In a forgotten attic of an old mansion lies a dollhouse, its miniature rooms frozen in time. But as night falls, the dolls come to life, their tiny footsteps echoing through the darkness, their porcelain eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. The dollhouse sits silent and untouched, its tiny windows shuttered and its doors closed tight. But as night falls and the moon rises high in the sky, a strange transformation occurs. The dolls inside the house awaken from their slumber, their joints creaking as they move about their tiny rooms. At first, it's only a faint rustling, a soft shuffling of feet that echoes through the darkness. But as the night wears on, the sounds grow louder, more insistent, until they become a cacophony of tiny footsteps and whispered voices that seem to fill the entire attic with their eerie presence. Those who dare to enter the attic at night find themselves surrounded by the haunting sight of the dollhouse's inhabitants, their porcelain faces twisted into expressions of malice and madness. They watch in horror as the dolls move about their tiny rooms, their movements jerky and unnatural, as if they're being controlled by some unseen force. Some try to flee, but find themselves rooted to the spot, unable to tear their eyes away from the nightmarish scene unfolding before them. Others press on, driven by a morbid curiosity to uncover the truth behind the dollhouse's dark secret. But no matter how they try to rationalize what they're seeing, they can't shake the feeling that there's something deeply wrong about the dollhouse, something sinister lurking just beneath its innocent facade. And when the first light of dawn breaks through the attic window, the dolls return to their slumber, their tiny rooms once again frozen in time. But those who have witnessed their nocturnal antics know that the dollhouse's secrets will always remain, waiting to ensnare the unwary in their web of darkness.